Alright, I just got back from vacation, and 2 episodes of From were released during this time, so I have a lot of catching up to do with this video. And if you're not really interested in me talking about episode 4, you can probably skip ahead to episode 5 if you're not really interested in seeing what I have to say about episode 4. And this is going to have spoilers if you're not aware of that. And I'm just going to guess that whoever's clicking on this video is probably going to be more interested in the spoiler talk than just reviewing it without spoilers. But starting off with episode 4, this was probably the most hyped up episode of the season. I'm pretty sure there's been multiple actors from the show saying that this was probably going to be the best episode of the season. So there's a lot of hype going into this episode. But for me, I just feel like this episode might have been a bit overhyped. I probably have the most issues with this episode. And that's not to say that I think this is a bad episode. I just think that there's a lot more glaring issues that I noticed during this one. And the episode starts off with the fake Thomas calling Ethan on the phone. And it's just pretty clearly trying to manipulate Ethan into going outside and getting in danger. And then Jim eventually grabs the phone, and then the fake Thomas says to Jim a bunch of more manipulative stuff. But I did think it was interesting that the fake Thomas says to Jim that his kids aren't his kids anymore.
You leave my children alone.
But they're not your children anymore.
I'm not sure if that was just some weird... I don't know, but I would imagine it might have meaning, but I don't really know for sure. And then Jim just shaking Ethan about, like, the phone call and who it was and stuff like that was just so stupid. And the fact that Julie was mad at what Jim did with Ethan the last episode, but not this, was just kind of stupid to me. Like, Jim's anger here was completely unwarranted, yet in the last episode, it actually made a lot more sense as to why Jim was mad at Ethan. So I just thought that was kind of stupid. And then also, there's just more stupid stuff that happens with this family later on in the episode. Like, Jim just sprints out through the door without even looking. And this is, like, I think the second time this has happened this season. Not with Jim, but, like, with the family. And then soon afterwards, Ethan basically does the same thing, and...
Oh, no. Hey, come here.
I don't know, it's the second time Ethan's just ran outside at night for, I guess, no reason. But it was still not the smart thing for him to do. I'm just getting kind of sick of, like, this family doing stupid stuff. And then we get to the scene with Tabitha and the ambulance. And I don't know, I initially thought that Tabitha's reaction was just not really enough at first. But I can understand that, you know, she was just taking in the scene and probably had a lot of shock going on. I do think that Tabitha should have tried to warn them, like, way earlier than it looked like she did. But that's something I'm willing to forgive since... It's just something that would take a lot of time, and we don't really need 10 to 15 minutes of Tabitha trying to convince the EMTs to listen to her and then them not listening to her. And if I'm being honest, I don't really think her acting is the greatest. And I mean, I think I heard that she got nominated for some awards for acting, but I just think in this show it really hasn't been her best work, to be honest. And I don't know if that's because of her, like, switching back and forth between having an accent and not having an accent. But I don't know, I don't really... It's something I've been ignoring, but I just don't think her acting in the show is very great. And then later on in the episode, when the ambulance is still driving around at night because they wouldn't listen to Tabitha, this is where a lot of people had some issues, and to be honest, I mean, a little bit, but some of it was justifiable. It was not really anything that I would, like, hold against the show. The monsters laid a trap for the EMTs, and they fell for it because, again, they have no knowledge of what's going on in this world. And then after watching the EMTs get torn apart, the police officer gets really trigger-happy, which, I don't know. I think it was kind of stupid of her to just be shooting left and right at, like, everything when it clearly wasn't doing anything. And of course, she later gets someone killed because of it, because she just starts shooting everything that she sees. And again, like, yeah, I get that you're panicked in this scenario, but, like, at what point do you just stop shooting your gun because it's not doing anything? And the cop also abandoned 2 people to die in the ambulance, including the one that warned her about the monsters in the first place. So it is pretty fucked up, and I do understand that she was panicked and stuff. And they do tie the people down generally on the first day. So, I mean, I'm not really, like... I don't know, it's not really something I hold against the show. And then with the scene of Victor and Sarah building a fort in the basement, I was fine enough with it. A lot of people had issues with how Victor didn't give as much information as they might have wanted. And I can agree with that. But at the same time, I just think people have been complaining about the show like, oh my god, you guys need to give us all the information at once right now. Give us information. And they just expect everything to come at once. And I just don't think that's realistic for a show like this. Because if you just get all the information you want, you're going to get bored and not want to watch it anymore. Plus, Victor experienced an incredibly traumatic event where literally everyone he knew died and he was just like living alone for who knows how long. So I can understand why when these memories start to resurface, he wouldn't exactly have the greatest reaction to it. And I think if everyone you knew died when you were a kid, and then you were just stuck alone for like years, you would probably have a pretty similar reaction to remembering some of it. And plus, we did get some more information about how the guy that was starting to go crazy was starting to talk to his doll. And it was Jasper the doll that we've seen in season 2. So, I mean, I would have liked to see a little bit more information there. But I think I'm mostly like okay with the amount that we were given here. I did think that Jasper the doll screaming at the young Victor was pretty bad, and I literally laughed out loud when that happened. I don't know if the show was trying to be scary there or something, but it really was not scary at all. I think my favorite part of the scene, though, was when Victor told Sarah that the difference between him and her is that he didn't kill everyone that he came in there with. And also when Victor called Sarah the scariest person in the town. And I'm worried that Jade's going to turn exactly into the other dude from the past and turn insane and turn into a bad guy, as he is one of the most likable characters on the show. And I would honestly just hate to see that, and I would hope that the recycle wouldn't repeat for him as well. And then Fatima drinking the dead woman's blood just confirms that she's either going to turn into a monster or that something's wrong with her baby. And again, I think that's something that we've all known for like the last couple episodes. So I just think they're kind of beating a dead horse with these scenes, to be honest. And then she lies to Alice about like what she was going to go do in that room. And I just kind of find her lack of communication with Alice to be pretty annoying. And I'm guessing that this is something that's going to be resolved by the end of the season, where Alice is going to have to kill Fatima, similarly to how Boyd had to kill his wife. Or that Fatima will kill Alice, and then Boyd's just going to have to kill Fatima in return. But yeah, I don't know, all these scenes have just been really up in their faces about how Fatima's pregnancy is going wrong, and I don't know, I think they're beating a dead horse with it, and that they either need to speed up the process of it, or to not really show as much of them. And then everyone's saying that Tilly is going to be some evil witch or something. But at this point, I just think she's probably a red herring. Tilly was the one that brought up showing Fatima the tarot cards. And then when she tried to show Fatima the tarot cards, the town blocked that from happening and sent in a crow. And it wouldn't really make sense if Tilly was in on it if the town itself didn't want Fatima to know what was going on or what was wrong with her. So I don't think it would really make any sense for Tilly to be evil or something. Then I was initially annoyed with what happened with Randall in this episode, as I was pretty sure he was just going to die at the start of episode 5. But now that I know what happens, I'm like a little less annoyed since he's just not going to like die. As if he died there, I thought it was going to be a really cheap death. Like, really, you just spawn in cicadas when he was going to get away, and then that's how he dies? Like, I don't know, I just think that would have been a really cheap death there. Like if Kenny was running away from the monsters and all of a sudden like a cicada just spawned in front of him and like paralyzed him and then he dies, like, I don't know, I would have been pretty pissed. I do think that shows that like there's a really big either hive-like mind going on, or if something out there is controlling the movements of these monsters, as that seemed like pretty clear collaboration between the two monsters to me. But I just thought that Randall was gonna die since they showed him sprout out on an ambulance and then the monsters themselves got everyone's attention with them. And he had like a really bad neck injury, and it just didn't really make sense to me as how he was gonna survive. But yeah, I don't know, I guess it just wasn't as severe as it looked or something. I don't know. But yeah, I just felt kind of mixed overall about this episode. I still liked it. I just think the fact that the cast and everyone else online was hyping up this episode kind of hurt it a bit for me, since I had really high expectations for this episode, and it just didn't really meet the mark for me. This is an episode that I think should have been like at least an hour long. And with all the plot lines going on this episode, I just feel like we were like really spread thin there. Like the episode was covering Kenny's group, Victor, Tabitha, Fatima, Elgin, Boyd and Randall, and Jim and the kids. And all in a span of like 40 minutes. And it just felt like the constant switching between all of them, it felt like it was like, oh, here's this scene, here's that scene, here's this scene, here's that scene, here's this scene, here's that scene. And I don't know, it just felt all over the place to me. And I still like the episode overall. Like, I would personally give it a 7 out of 10. I just think, again, that it was probably the most flawed episode so far. And I just hope that this trend doesn't continue with the rest of the season and it was just like one misstep. And even then, I wouldn't really say it was a misstep. Like, I still thought it was a good episode. I just think there was more issues with this episode than the previous ones. And then on to episode 5. This was an episode that I honestly liked a lot more than episode 4. So I'm hoping that episode 4 was more of just like a random episode I didn't like quite as much as the rest of the season. And even then, 7 out of 10, not that bad. It's just not as good as the rest of the episodes. Now, I think probably the weakest part of this episode was Elgin and Julie, as, I don't know, like there were some parts of it that were interesting. Like, I agreed with Julie how the town is not really going to let them out, and it's just feeding on the fact that people are getting hope, and then it's going to take them right back in. And I don't think that people are actually going to be able to fully escape until they take out whatever's in control of the town. And then initially in the scene, when Julie walked into the house, I thought it was just going to be another one of the, like, Fatima eating something and then Julie's going to find out. But instead it was Elgin attacking her because he was having one of his psychotic breakdown things. And I was worried at first that he was just not going to explain any of it to her and just run away. But then they later cut back to them and he was fully explaining, like, oh yeah, I've been seeing this weird monster thing. So at least that, like, a lot of people have been complaining about how characters don't want to communicate and stuff. But I think so far the characters have been communicating and it's made sense to me. I just think that when they went into the basement and then just started taking pictures and stuff, it just kind of felt like a filler part of the episode that I didn't really care for. Like, if in one of the pictures that Elgin took, there was that creepy monster that he had been seeing in the background, then I'd be like, okay, this is not complete filler, but like nothing happened, and I got the feeling that with the next episode, they're just gonna jump ahead with them, and they're not gonna be in the basement anymore. So I'm a little annoyed with how it felt like them going to the basement was a waste of time. And then with the return of Tabitha, I'm glad that Jim is actually being a good dad/husband here and not wanting people to bombard his wife with like tons of questions about what just happened when she literally just got back. As well as Jim just not wanting Tabitha to go out there and put her life in danger and trying to go through the tree again. And to be honest, I've been kind of disappointed in the family overall, as when they were introduced, they made it seem like they were going to be this cool and very important family, and while they're sort of important with at least Tabitha, I don't know, I just don't really like them, to be honest. You have Jim making all these stupid decisions, and same for Ethan, and then Tabitha, I just find her kind of annoying, and again, like I said earlier, I just don't think she's the greatest actor, or at least she might be a good actor, but for the show, I don't think she's done a very good job. And then Julie, I don't know, she's just, again, kind of annoying to me. Like, she's either been, like, a background character or just typical teenage angst against her parents, with some of it being explainable, and then other times it's, like, her getting mad at Jim for no reason. I'm also glad that they explained why Victor ran away from his father initially and didn't want to meet up with him, since this is also a case where if he didn't explain why, I'd be like, really, you're just gonna run away from your father when you hadn't seen him in, like, decades, and you're not gonna explain to us why either? And I think the reason of him being just scared that his father's not going to look at him the same or see him as like a completely grown-up man and not a child anymore, and just being scared of rejection, I feel like that's a pretty valid reason to run away and not like initially want to see your dad. I'm also happy that it's not just some abusive dad situation like some people had been saying online, since otherwise had he not explained it, that's might have been what I would have came to the conclusion of. But I guess the evidence also was there that Victor's dad probably wasn't abusive, since he just kept all of Victor's belongings in his room, like, over those 20 years or however long he was gone. So it'd be kind of weird for some abusive dad to, like, care about his kid that much. And with the town meeting, a lot of people were annoyed with Ellis and Fatima and the townspeople, and I don't know, I mean, I still mostly lean with Boyd, but I still think they brought up some valid concerns. Like, if someone found the way out, they should probably be looking into that, like, immediately. But I also understood Boyd's perspective that this is still something that's pretty dangerous, and just because it worked once doesn't mean that it was going to work again. As well as the fact that Tabitha got sent back anyways. So yeah, she escaped, but she got sent back by the town, like, within the first, like, day or two of her getting back. So it didn't really matter. Especially since I don't think the town would actually just make it that easy for people as to just hop through a tree and escape. Now, what I really disagreed with the, like, townspeople on, though, is them bitching about Tabitha not doing more in the real world. And they're like, oh, you should have gotten help. You should have gone to the police. It's like, literally, if she went to the police, she would immediately get arrested for the murder of her family. And they probably would have institutionalized her. So I don't think that would have been any help at all for her to try to bring the police in. So I think the town is being incredibly unfair to Tabitha here. Now, I think that Dale is right to a certain extent that if Tabitha would manage to escape, they might as well try to escape the same way. It's just that, yeah, when I was watching the episode, I was like, I don't think it's gonna be that simple to just try to do the same thing and escape. Especially since, like, the trees, you don't really know where you're gonna end up when you go through them. So, like, the second he started acting all cocky about, like, oh, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be going home and saving everyone and laying on my couch, I was like, alright, he's gonna die here. And I'll give the show a lot of credit for what they ended up doing, as I thought he was just gonna, like, spawn up in the sky and then just die from a fall. But instead they put him into the side of the swimming pool and he just got crushed from the concrete, and I just thought that was pretty creative, honestly. Now, I thought the reaction to just look at him and not try to, like, get him out of there, it was a little weird. But at the same time, yeah, he was probably gonna die anyways. And I also think that someone did have to try this method to get out anyway, since it would be pretty silly if that was literally the way out and then everyone was just too scared to actually try it. And I am glad it wasn't just that simple, since, like, really, that's all it's gonna be, is everyone just hops through a tree and then jumps out the lighthouse, and then they're out. And speaking of the lighthouse, I was actually wondering if it was gonna be he gets spawned up in the air and dies, or if he actually goes to the lighthouse and then he's like, okay, well, I heard that she gets pushed out of the lighthouse and then she got sent back to the real world. And I thought it would have been cool and interesting if Dale just jumps out of the lighthouse and then just falls to his death instead. But I think I am satisfied with how they did it, since if he jumped out of the lighthouse and died, I don't think anyone would have found out. And then the way that Dale died also enabled Boyd to be like, alright, see what happened when you tried to go against what I said? Who's next? Who wants to try the tree next?
Wait, who's next? Huh? Still want to go to the tree? Go ahead then. Who the fuck is next? I am trying to keep you alive. Don't you see that?
And speaking of the Boyd, I think he was a little bit too harsh on the cop. She was trying to help him out in the meeting as well as Tabitha, and he just goes in on her for it. And again, I think the cop abandoning Tabitha and Victor's dad, as well as going trigger happy on all the monsters, was really stupid. She was put in like a really tense and scary situation, and they literally tied people up on their first night there for a reason. And I think she was one of the first people that on her first night there, she encountered the monsters with the gun. So yeah, like, she did some pretty shitty things, but at the same time, like, it's kind of hard to put a lot of the blame on her, especially when she was trying to make up for it already and feels really bad about it. And then Boyd makes a pretty good point to Alice that leading isn't an easy thing to do, and that, like, if they wanted to send people through the trees, that they're basically just picking someone that they're willing to sacrifice. So that when Boyd is like, who are you willing to pick to die? Like, who? You'll pick someone right now. Like I just think Boyd was making some pretty good points there. And if you think about it, Ella's talking about how someone needs to finally start doing something was just kind of silly, since he's kind of just been a background character this season. And I am glad that Fatima's finally talking to Ellis about what's going on with her. Even though it really happened because Ellis, like, ran into her doing that and had to question her. And again, I think they were starting to beat a dead horse with all the Fatima, like, eating rotten food scenes. But at least in this case, it did lead to something, so I'm alright with it here. And on one hand, I think it's a little weird that the town just left all this rotting food, like, laying around, instead of just, like, burning it or something. But I guess it would just be, like, a filler scene to just show Fatima, like, hoarding a bunch of it herself. So I guess it's whatever. But overall, this is an episode I enjoyed a lot more than the previous episode. Like, yeah, there wasn't, like, a ton of action and horror in this episode. But I think that was fine, as I would personally take an episode like this over one like episode 4, where it's just tons of action, like, where you can't even really process what's going on because we're just constantly switching between different characters and scenes. So I think overall I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. Do you guys agree with me though? Is there something you disagree with? If you have any theories about the show, be sure to let me know in the comments below, as I am pretty interested to see what other people have to say. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, as I do intend on making videos like this for the rest of the season, and any other future seasons of the show. But that's all for now, so hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.